In our last video, we set up a box, gave it the ability to use physics. We created a trigger so that when you enter that trigger, it would activate the physics on that block. But what if we wanted to have multiple boxes? I'm going to take my box that I have selected in the world, and I'm going to duplicate it. So Control D will actually create a duplicate object that's a little bit off to the side, but I'm going to create one and I'm going to put it on top. Let me change some of the scaling here so it's not as giant a box as my other one. I'm going to then Control D that little box. I'm going to make another one. And I will Control D and I will make another one. That one I need to bring out this way. And so now I have multiple boxes in the scene that I want to go ahead and add physics to make all of these boxes work. One of the neat keys in Unreal is that I can press the End key and the object will move down to its lowest position. So I can use this to stack my boxes directly on top of each other. But once again, all of these boxes have their physics turned off by default. Their physics won't turn on until I enter the trigger. But right now, it's only going to turn on the physics for my bottom box. I want it to activate physics for all of these boxes. So let's take a look at how we can do that. So I'm going to go ahead and edit my box trigger again, bring up my box. And right now, we tell it to activate a single static mesh actor, just one. But I'm going to want to take that and turn it instead into a list or an array of actors. Now, in order to do that, I'm going to have this trouble where I already am using my variable in the scene, so I can't change a variable that I'm already using. So I'm going to delete this call to actor before I make this change. Then I'm going to right-click on this actor to change it into an array. So we'll see that the variable picture changed from a single little item there, so I'll change it back, from one little brick to what looks like a grid. A grid is going to be an array or a list of these. So this is going to allow me to put more than one of these actors into this variable. If I bring that out into my event graph, I'm going to be able to get actor, but now my actor is an array. I can't just connect my array up to the static mesh component because it doesn't know which item from the array or which item from the list that I want to use. So think of an array like a shopping list. If you have a piece of paper with numbered items on it, if I were to tell you to go to that list and, do something to one of those items, you wouldn't know which one I'm talking about. So when we work with arrays, we're going to need to get an individual item from that list. That item number is going to be called the index. So the index is which item from the list. And in fact, in Unreal and in many programming languages like it, the index is going to be zero-based. So instead of saying which number on the list you're going to choose, think of it as saying how many items are you going to skip before you get to the one you want. So the first item of the list, you skip 0. So the first item is item number 0. The next item is item 1 because you skipped one item to get to that next item on the list. So in order to grab just the first actor from the list, I could pull off of this actor. I could go to Get, and it will get a copy of that item. So here's my item, actor. It's at index 0, and I'm going to come off of that and select. And now we'll grab the static mesh component of the very first item. It skips 0, and it's going to simulate physics on just that item. But I don't want to simulate physics on just that one item. I want to simulate physics on every item that's in that list. So instead of get, we're going to use a new node that's going to be called for each. So here's our for each loop. So a for each loop is going to have an input where it comes in. We're going to tell it which array we're going through. So here's my actor array. On begin play, I'm going to do my for each loop on my actor array. And then loop body is going to happen for each item in the array. So it'll happen for the first item, then it'll happen for the second item, then it'll happen for the third item, then it'll happen for the fourth item. And so what we're going to do is we're going to set our simulate physics to turn off the physics once for every single item in that array. So now it's going to go through the array one at a time. It's going to run loop body, and it's going to set simulate physics. But which item? What do we want to do with it? What target? Well, that's what array element is. Array element is the item that's on that list. So I'm going to bring that down to my target to connect. So now, when I begin playing, it's going to look through this array, do something to every single item in the array, one at a time. What's it going to do? It's going to set the physics simulation to off. What is it going to set it to? The static mesh component of whichever item in the list it's currently doing the for each for, whichever item it's going through. If you ever happen to need the number, the index of which item in the list it is, you can get that from the array index. And then we're going to see how down here we're going to be able to utilize this completed. So I'm going to add another one of those for each loops. Only now when we begin our overlap, we're going to go through our for each loop. It's going to use the same actor array. Inside of our loop body, we're going to set the simulate physics for the static mesh component, right? Target static mesh component of every item in that array. We're going to set it to true. And then I'm going to break this link. And then once we're finished, right? Once we're done and we've gone through all of them, here's my completed. That's when my completed is going to add impulse to just one item. So I'm going to break this link as well. And the one item that we're going to link to is we're going to grab our mesh array. And I'm just going to get and add to the first item in the list. So here's my first static mesh actor. I'm going to need to be able to get the static mesh component. And that's who we're going to add the impulse to. So it may look a little confusing with all of these interconnected. If it helps you to break them up, that may be the best way to do it. So let me refactor this, redraw it, so that they're broken up so that we can get a better view of what's going on. So here's my begin play. I'm going to grab my actor. It goes in here. The loop body is going to simulate physics. But what are we going to simulate physics for? Well, every single element that comes out of there, right? I'm going to get the static mesh component. And that's going to be my target. So let's break the link to that one. And we will break the link there. So now we've got a much easier to read and understand version of what happens on start. So on begin play, our actor array, we grab the elements one at a time, and we're going to do this to them. We're going to set their simulate physics to false. What are we setting to false? The static mesh component of whatever array element is currently in our for each loop. Then when we begin our overlap, we're going to do another for each loop. We're going to grab another array of our actor array. We're going to go through our actor array again. And every loop body, we're going to take that element. We're going to grab that static mesh component, and we're going to simulate its physics to true, to turn its physics on. And then, once we've finished our loop, we're going to move down to this new task, and we're going to add impulse to a static mesh component, and we're just going to get, I don't need my tick, we're just going to get the first item, which is item number 0, from our list. So now, here we go. This is our way easier to read version of this blueprint. When we begin playing, we turn off the physics for everything. When we overlap, we do a for each one at a time. We turn on physics. And then after it's finished, we're going to add some force to actor 0, to that first actor. save and compile. When I come back here to Unreal, I can select my trigger. So here's my physics trigger. Under default, here's my actor. Instead of one little drop down, there's the option of adding elements. So I can add all 5 of my boxes. 0 is the one we're adding force to, so I want that to be my bottom one, number 4. And then I'm going to put all the other ones in here as well. All right, now that those are hooked up, we can give our level a save. I can press play. And at start, physics is off, so all my boxes are just sitting just fine. When I enter my trigger, physics turns on, they get force, and they fall. So that's just an interesting way to kind of activate that physics and make sure that it happens when we enter. But now we're able to do things to all of these objects. So start thinking about how you can interact with multiple objects. So when you're wanting to do a rock slide, you can turn a bunch of rocks on. When you're wanting to make a fire, you can turn on the smoke and the fire particles. When you're wanting to create an explosion, you can activate multiple explosive particle effects. You can add force to multiple objects to make them interact. So think about how you can smartly use arrays and the for each loop to do something to every element in that array.